righty there and welcome. It's Frontier Opening Bell. I am Faith Agbetuya and we'll start the show right now with a look at the closing figures for some African markets that we monitor here on Frontier Opening Bell. Starting with Nigerian exchange, which finished up yesterday with 0.11%, and Ivory Coast, which had 0.98%, a positive record. We also have the Egyptian exchange finishing on the on the negative note with a record of 0.98%. Kenya's Nairobi Securities Exchange finished positive with 2.46%. That was a huge one. While the South Africa's markets in Johannesburg recorded 0.17% profit yesterday. Moving away from the look at those figures, in East Africa, the financial market has some sub-stories, which include Egypt, the equity group recording 98% increase in profit after tax to about, say, 17.9 billion Kenyan shillings in the first half of 2021. The Kenya Revenue Authority's tax collection hits 121.8 billion Kenyan shillings in the month of July 2021, while Kakuza's results for half year 2021 shows that the company's profit after tax dropped by 28.65% to about 194.6 million Kenyan shillings. ACE Financial Advisory gets capital market authorities go ahead to close operations. And Rindra is becoming Madagascar's new Minister of Finance, all of that in East Africa. And moving very quickly into West Africa and Nigeria, the OPEC is saying that Nigeria's new Petroleum Industry Act will lift oil production in the country and raise natural gas reserves. HMC is saying that the less than 3% allocation of oil communities in the newly passed petroleum industry bill will hurt oil companies in the country, while Nigeria's July inflation slows further to 17.38% year on year, while TY Holdings raises stake in BOC gases to 72%. AFDB bars Sagittarius Nigeria Limited affiliates for fraud. On the BRVM Stock Exchange, there will be dividend payment of 109.315 CFA per share on the 20th. That's on 27th of September this year. Chima is on the call right now. Chima, thank you so much for joining me on the show. Chima Upadike is from Vetiva Capital Management. It's really great having you join me on the show. I'd like you to talk very quickly on some of the headline stories that really interest you today.
Hi, Faith. Thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to join you on the show today. So, one of the headlines you have, it spans across two of the headlines you have today, is speaking on the newly signed Petroleum Industry Act that was signed into law on Monday. So the first headline is saying from OPEC that the new law will lift oil production and raise natural gas reserves. In terms of oil production, I think I see what they mean. I haven't fully looked at the article yet, but given what we have in the Petroleum Industry Act that was signed recently, especially with the second headline where we have that over 3% of oil communities, over 3% of operating expenses for oil communities will hurt oil companies. So one of the provisions of the act is 3% of operating expenses for these oil companies will go to a trust fund for communities in the region where oil exploration and oil activities is being carried out. I think that really helps the communities develop, because a lot of damages go on in those societies where oil is being explored from. And apart from that, once you are taking something from a host community, you should be able to, pay them some sort of compensation or some sort of reward for taking those resources from their community. So I think that is very beneficial. It was going to be 5%. Was in contention for a bit, but then was finally agreed at 3%. And one of the conditions for communities to get that 3% is that there will be no vandalism or destruction of company property or oil company property. So I think it's kind of a win-win situation for both parties affected. So the oil companies are protected in terms of their property. There'll be less vandalism, and the communities are going to be getting 3% of the operating expenses that these companies spend. So looking at just Seplat's financial statements for 2020, the company spent about $76 million in 2020 for general and admin expenses. Now, if you take 3% of that, that's about $3 million, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a lot of money. And given that Seplat is not the only company that is in that region exploring, so I think it's a good development for the companies. Now, in terms of how this will affect oil production, well, if we a lot of these companies have complained severely or significantly or about how all pipeline vandalism and all those other property destructions have affected their production capabilities. So if this new incentive of 3% for the oil communities will drastically reduce the vandalism we can see on these pipelines, then it definitely improve oil production and reduce any leakages that we may have been seeing in the previous years. But on to other issues concerning the Petroleum Industry Act, we know that a lot of people have been expecting this bill or the act or the law for the longest time, right? And many investors are afraid that whilst this bill answers a lot of questions and does a lot of good and brings a lot of changes that investors or communities, as we can see, have been willing or have been meaning to see. They are afraid that this might have come at a late time. It might be a little too late for the bill because, as we know, a lot of countries, companies, investors are moving away from fossil fuel energy and looking into cleaner, greener sources of energy. So it may be that we are somewhat late at this time. However, some people will say better late than never. There's still some gains to be milked from this change that we have seen. A reform is a reform, and whatever good it can do should be done, no matter how late it is perceived to be. Another problem I see is, well, despite the Petroleum Industry Act that is supposed to take away subsidies, we still have subsidies being paid by the government, and it will continue, until the government is able to come to terms with or come into an agreement with labor regarding fuel subsidies and the pricing and how it will affect, individuals in the economy, right? So with 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 that happening, or on with the development of the fuel subsidy still being in place, we know that a lot of money is going into subsidies. Currently, we spend about 120 billion naira on subsidies monthly, and if you take that money, and use it to do other infrastructure developments that is sorely needed in the country, we know how far it will go. Although a lot of people don't trust the government, and when they say they are going to do infrastructure developments, but not they say they don't see these developments, so they're not willing to wait. Why should I have to suffer the removal of subsidy when I'm not even going to see the positive effects that you're talking about? So I think a lot of trust needs to go into that for that to work. And apart from that, it is really hurting our debt levels. So currently, we already have high debt levels, right? And to be able to sustain these subsidy payments, we need to borrow a lot more. Already, the government is talking about borrowing through Eurobonds and the like. So I think it's something that we really need to look for a
Great,
solution
great.
to
Hi,
as soon as
Chima.
possible.
I was saying that as much as I understand all your points, have been trying to interject actually. And then I feel that we say that the PIA is all good. It looks all good, especially from the side of the government. Do you see that? I mean, so you will think that the oil communities are still not satisfied with the rulings of the 3% allocation given to them. They feel that they should actually get more. And then it looks like already it's been painted that the PIA is the best thing that Nigeria can get at the moment. How do you see these oil community members being at ease and then still having it pleasing or paying the government as we speak?
I think the government is still trying to placate these communities. 3%. Um, Originally, it was going to be 2.5% that the companies were willing to agree to, and
It's
then it was moved
asking
to
for
3%.
5%.
Yes, I know. I'm saying that this is progress that we have seen, in terms of getting to 3%. There might be room for improvement. We're not sure, and we don't know. But 3% is really better than 2% or 2.5% or nothing, right? So it's better that we're getting, or they are getting 3% for their troubles than nothing at all. I think it can be a gradual process. The companies would have to look for what is, as much as they want to be able to give back to these communities or help these communities, they cannot do, what will hurt them in terms of their profits and in terms of, their operations, because this is not even in terms, the money is not, is a huge sum in terms of their operating, is focused on their operating expenses. So I think it could be, it needs to be, or it could be a gradual process of discussions between the host communities, amicable discussions between the host communities and these companies, and the people agreements will be reached. But like the Minister of Petroleum for State has said, I think 3%, is 3% that we can't see is better than 100% that we may never see.
Great. Yeah,
You
I
know.
love those thoughts. Thank you so much, Jamal, for sharing your thoughts with me this morning. Moving away from West Africa, let's quickly have what is going on in the southern region of Africa, where the South African that's the SARB, is having the governors set to brief Parliamentary Standing Committee today. The SARB over there is the South Africa Reserve Bank. The Transnet is about to get 100 billion rands new infrastructural investment for port network, while JP Morgan floats a $200 million fund, which is approximately 300 million rands for the South African black-owned enterprise. Zimbabwe Stock Exchange has plans to increase retail investors' participation, and Econet is looking forward to a huge profit taking in the first quarter of 2022, with data up 77% and voice traffic volume increasing by 25%. MTN shares up 112.7% to year to date on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, as South Africa and Nigeria hold steady. In North Africa, the Egypt Central Bank is set to sell 622 million treasury bills in euro denominations, while the Qatar National Bank Al Ahly Egypt gets $50 million European Bank for Reconstruction and Development loan to boost green investment. Forex profit rises 59.6% to 137.13 million Egyptian pounds in the first half of 2021, and BAM's lending rates fall 4.32% in the second quarter versus 4.45% recorded in the first quarter of 2021. And very quickly, the last headline we have from North Africa, a webinar on development of Tunisia and Libya's investment will be held today, August 18th. That's it on Frontier Opening Bell today. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. I am Faith Akbetuye, and thank you, Chima Okadike, for being with me on the show today. It's really great having you.